Russell Moore moving over to Christianity yesterday. Good move. Good move for him. No, not at all.
Not for us. I'm scared. I'm a little nervous.
Marijuana ganja expert Pastor Doug Wilson on the show with us today. That's great. And we got some Army videos that we're going to be showing you guys. Some good old training,
Some recruitment videos.
Yeah, some good, good old-fashioned USA political Army recruitment. Get you excited.
I don't think Pastor Wilson's
to go to
going to
battle
stay
videos
around very long after we play those. If we play those videos,
were they smoking the ganja when they were making those Army videos?
They were smoking something.
Yeah, something. Hey, make sure you guys subscribe to our magazine, Fight Laugh Feast magazine. It is the next issue is coming out in June, so sign up now so you can get into that delivery for June. A number of you guys have been waiting for your magazine since April. I had a couple people email me and say, "Hey, where's our magazine?" I was like, "Well, you're getting into the June
because they
subscription." That's right. After
the first issue came out.
That's my point.
We got to do a subscription for back orders. I want the back orders.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure that out. That's just another logistical thing that me and Ian need to work on.
Write that down, Ian.
We're full of logistical problems right now.
Well, praise God.
Yeah, that's true.
Pastor Wilson's also going to be joining us in Tennessee, September 9th through the 11th at our Politics of Sex conference. Really excited about this. I was on the Mark Scheffline report yesterday. I think that's how I say his last name. But he allowed me to plug our conference.
Nice.
It's really nice. Yeah, so
very cool.
We'll be in Tennessee September 9th through the 11th. We got all sorts of fun and games planned for that.
Registration's opening in like a week.
After our planning session that we're going to have.
Have we talked to Mark Dewey about the possible?
Well, okay. Hey, come on, man.
All right,
come on.
I'm just teasing.
It's part of our big planning session.
Hey, this show is brought to you by Samaritan Ministries, which connects hundreds of thousands of Christians across the nation who care for one another's medical needs, all without the use of insurance. Here's how it works.
And marijuana, without the use of marijuana too. Just
a little plug. Yeah, you might want to look into it. First, there are no network restrictions. As a Samaritan member, when a healthcare need arises, whatever it is, you choose your doctor, your hospital, your treatment, your pharmacy, and then Samaritan Ministries connects you with other members who pray for your need and send a financial gift directly to you to help with your medical expenses, and then you use the money you receive to pay your healthcare providers. You can join anytime. New members are always welcome. When the body of Christ comes together to pray, encourage, and provide for one another, burdens are lifted, God is glorified, and Obamacare just died another little death.
Yeah.
This applies to all areas of life, including healthcare. Learn more at SamaritanMinistries.org/crosspolitic.
That's great. You're a member of Samaritan Ministries, aren't you?
I have been.
You have been.
I'm not currently because I got pitched into the maws of the federal government.
Whoa.
They made you.
There's a story there.
Is it safe for you to be here is the question.
I'm old. We were members of Samaritan for years, and it was very, very good.
Yeah.
We've had really good experience with it, too.
So you guys, when the Army does releases a recruitment video, kind of, gets you excited. Right, you want to join the Army.
The old ones from back in the day, like the Marines.
Be all you can be.
That's right. Hey, there you go.
I remember that when I was a little boy.
So, they got an updated, and this is not a mockumentary. This is
real,
a true release of the. I think it's Army that did this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems.
Why is it a cartoon?
It's all fake.
It begins in California with a little girl raised by two moms.
Oh my goodness. Do we have to watch the whole thing, Knox?
Although I had a fairly typical childhood.
So Pastor Wilson pulls his hair out.
Took ballet, played violin.
You did not have a typical.
I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. When I was 6 years old, one of my moms had an accident that left her paralyzed. Doctors said she might never walk again. But she tapped into my family's pride to get back on her feet, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class and then attended UC Davis, where I joined a sorority full of other strong women. But as graduation approached, I began feeling like I'd been handed so much in life, a sorority girl stereotype. Sure, I'd spent my life around inspiring women, but what had I really achieved on my own? One of my sorority sisters was studying abroad in Italy. Another was climbing Mount Everest. I needed my own adventures, my own challenge. And after meeting with an Army recruiter,
Not showing the ground.
I found it. I found strength, and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way. I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my calling.
So, this is actually
this is a campaign that they've been pulling off for like the last 2 months of the calling. There's like four or five other videos like this.
Don't you have a good stinger for this? I mean, come on.
If I were Putin, I'd declare war now.
well,
funny you should bring
that up.
Это первый день твоей новой жизни.
Oh.
This is a Russian.
То, что было вчера,
Army
не имеет
ad.
значения. То, кем ты был прежде, уже никого не волнует.
It's not a
Теперь
cartoon.
важно то, кем ты будешь сегодня. Что ты знаешь о себе?
Oh?
На что ты способен? Вопросы могут остаться без ответов, но разве ты сможешь потом спокойно спать? Узнать себя, познать границы своих возможностей. К черту границы. Ты готов ломать себя до изнеможения. Каждый день.
No rope.
No rope.
We saw the ground.
Это ты решил себе что-то доказать. Это ты пытаешься увидеть в каждой тени своего врага, потому что без врага нет боя, а без боя нет победы. Но на самом деле, главный враг — это ты. Вчерашний ты. Твоя задача выследить врага, догнать его, превзойти, стать лучше, чем он, и вернуться назад, победителем. Потому что завтра — первый день твоей новой жизни.
That's pretty good.
The Russian helps.
I have no idea what they're saying.
So
But
someone had actually spliced
These
these
two
two videos together.
Yeah.
They did the Russia video first, and then they spliced in our Army video right after it.
Our pansy
Our
Army video.
effeminate gay Army video right after it. And it was like, it when I saw it, I was like, oh, that stings.
So, Pastor Wilson, are we screwed?
No.
Okay. But that don't look good.
Oh, that's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah. But the thing we have going for us is that it really looks terrible to us.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You think that
Does it look bad to us?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't think this
In other words, it's a laughing stock.
this does not fly in most states at all.
Right.
Alabama, Texas.
There's a few little liberal bubbles in Seattle and New York and L.A., Chicago or whatever, where this is like, oh, girl power. But I think you're right. I think 90% of the country thinks, oh gosh.
I think you're right, Pastor Wilson. The first reaction I had after I watched the Go Army video was, the first thing I do when I see bad guys flying out the skies with M16 is think, where's the sorority girls to come save me? So I think you're right. There is a natural kind of like, I don't believe this for once. It's like watching the women's superhero movies right now. They have to have so many special effects to make me believe.
Those?
I watch all kinds of movies. Yeah, of course.
we have a business meeting after this.
He's a movie critic.
Movie critic.
He reviews them for Christianity Today.
Me and Russell Moore will not be getting along. I'll tell you that right now. But there is this unbelievable type of effect that they're trying to make me believe that these women are actually able to take a guy who's 250 pounds full of muscle and she's 140 pounds dripping wet and she can.
Yeah. Well, it is pretty hilarious that it's all cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's not real.
Right.
Like you had to color all that. It's imaginary.
Right.
It's not real.
When we are creating, so I keep on thinking though, what is at the bottom of us creating a video like that? Especially the Army, Army.
The people who create the videos are living in their own little bubble, in their own little echo chamber, and everybody in the office thought it was great or was afraid to say that it wasn't.
Right.
Because corporate America disciplines, the military disciplines, so they're purging conservative officers, they're purging conservative servicemen, and if
extremism is what they're calling it.
They're calling it extremism, and so this is a downstream consequence of the election.
So what? So if we say, a huge percentage of the country looks at this and giggles, just thinks this is hilarious, this is ridiculous, and yet, how many of those same people would be willing to do that out loud?
Right.
seems to be the real problem.
Right.
A whole bunch of them think it's a joke, but a whole bunch of them are unwilling to laugh, or if they know if they do laugh, they get fired.
They look around before they laugh.
Yeah. Right. Where does that put us?
Well, I think it puts us in a position of not being an organized resistance yet.
Okay.
We don't have a central point of organization. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of indicators that there's the material there for resistance, but we don't have really a flag to rally to.
I think you're right about that. I've watched that same thing in the SBC. I've seen a lot of guys who have had a huge problem with Russell Moore behind the scene who have been very, very clear.
Speaking of sorority girls.
Yeah. Message, but they have not.
Thank you for sharing.
But they have not been vocal or public at all about Russell Moore in the public arena.
Kind of like Russell Moore about Canadian pastors,
exactly, or the ERLC at all with John MacArthur.
Right.
They didn't say a thing.
Just silent on that whole thing.
And it would have been a masculine, manly thing to do for them to differ with John MacArthur. To say
just straight up
and say we would critique this, or to critique the Canadian pastors, but to go limp on it.
Yeah,
when your
silence.
whole everybody in the world looking at this sees it as a religious liberty issue,
and
your whole thing is religious liberty, to not talk about it at all
that's right.
is to appoint yourself irrelevant.
So I'm seeing people now kind of treat Russell Moore like, good, he's gone, we're happy he's out of here, good riddance. But I didn't see these people standing up at all, like the same thing, publicly saying, we have
Get
a
him out of
problem.
here.
Yeah, and not just that, but the ERLC period should be abolished.
But see, there's a good argument for that, because that kind of organization is going to attract certain kinds of functionaries. And there's an argument for that. I believe Rod Martin has made that.
He's
that
pushing
argument.
it. Yeah.
But the thing that you should note is, why did Russell Moore feel the need to go now?
Right.
Okay.
Before the next SBC.
In other words, instead of lamenting the lack of pressure, I think you should postulate an enormous amount of pressure.
Right. Well, I thought he left because Beth Moore left.
Well, he did. He had that line that if there isn't a room for Beth Moore in the SBC, there isn't room for a lot of us.
Right.
So what's the pressure that we should be putting on then?
Well, basically, I think the pressure that has been applied over the last year, asking questions, issuing challenges. There's been public stuff and there's been behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And it looks to me as though it's being somewhat effective.
It strikes me that there's not really a dialogue between both sides. There's a lot of bombs being lobbed, but no one's speaking. What do you mean? Well, a bunch of people in the SBC are saying, "Hey, let's get Russell Moore out." Russell Moore doesn't respond,
right.
Never acknowledges even the critiques, and the same thing's happened like with Revoice largely. I mean, people are kind of talking and inferring who they're talking about, but no one's really having a genuine dialogue.
And in the SBC, it's not even clear. The uniforms aren't clear. It's not even clear who's on which side. Right. So there's a lot of, it's like a water polo game where a lot of the action is going on underneath the surface.
We've talked to people who, it used to be this old, sort of Calvinist, non-Calvinist divide.
Right.
But that's all gotten mixed up. And now you have non-Calvinists who see the evil of critical race theory, for example, and social justice stuff, joining ranks with Calvinists who also see that. And you've got Calvinists who should see it. The J.D. Greers of the world or whatever.
He's a Calvinist?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Technically.
Okay.
But he's...
depends on what you mean by Calvinist.
Going limp and soft on critical theory and social justice stuff. And so that's where you've got, it's hard to tell the uniforms.
So, and the other thing to keep in mind, the bright side of this, is Russell Moore moving from the SBC to Christianity Today by one single move, moved both organizations to the right.
Will you say bars? I actually thought, when we talked about this on Wednesday through the midweek fix, one of my thoughts was actually Russell Moore going to Christianity Today. How long does it take for Russell Moore's, I assume, more liberal tendencies just to go completely flagrant and open now that there's nothing to stop him?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a board anymore. He has a boss
Well,
at Christianity.
I mean, we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
if he doesn't, then you're absolutely right. Christianity Today just brought on a more conservative.
Well, I find it really interesting that he's going to be the public theologian over there. All of a sudden, public theology is super popular.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think it was popular at all. I was like, hey,
no,
what happened to?
It's been popular all along.
Yeah, I
As
know.
long as you did the right public theology.
Yeah,
as long as you asked Obama
Into
for
your
the
heart.
correct.
But I'll throw one cautionary note. You know, for example, there are people in some of the skirmishes and fracases that we've been in. There are ostensibly, well, not ostensibly, more conservative magazines like World Magazine, who have not come to our defense. For example, where people at Christianity Today have. Right.
Yeah.
So
They still have a window.
there are people there. In other words, there are people, good people there. I don't know how they figure out I don't know how they
they
work
can
it
stay
around.
there.
So
Yeah.
I don't know how they can live in that environment.
Yeah.
But they do.
They do.
There are people there who are doing good work, and we appreciate it when someone says something good.
Right.
And there are people who are far more conservative than Christianity Today who won't take a stand.
Right.
Things are pretty blurry.
Yeah, I had a pretty favorable blurb of my book, Blood Bought World, back in the day when it came out in Christianity Today.
Oh, really?
I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, are we not going to cover the Maricopa stuff? We're going to move on?
Oh,
That's it.
we can bring it back, but we got to talk
Okay.
about Devoured by Cannabis, Weed, Liberty, and Legalization by Pastor Wilson. Pastor Wilson, you set me straight with a lot of this in this book. We'll talk about it, but
But you got to set him completely straight.
I'm not completely straight on this. You know, more cross politic next on cross politic.
When a medical need arises, hundreds of thousands of Christians across the nation care for one another by sharing financially for those medical needs. Samaritan members pray and reflect God's love and care by providing for one another. While times continue to change, God's love doesn't. He cares for us as we are called to care for one another.
A blunt rebuke of a high society.
Hey, I'm bringing this segment
He stole
in.
your thunder, dude. It's cooking your grits.
Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. This segment is brought to you by Gabe. Just saying whatever he wants.
I was reading the back cover.
Hey, we're really grateful to have Pastor Doug Wilson back with us again on the show and talking to him about his brand new book, Devoured by Cannabis. I got the limited edition, though. Did you get the limited edition?
You did.
I didn't.
Hey.
You did.
There we go.
What happened with the limited edition? They didn't like the cover of it? It was like,
Well, they crowdsourced. Which cover do you want us to publish?
oh,
okay.
I hate when they do that. I do. I'm an Apple guy. I'll tell you what you need. I ain't asking a bunch of questions.
So does this mean this is like a runner-up or something like that? Or
Well, that was the two options, and this is the cover that won.
the one and this one is the next up or something like
to
that?
be honest, this is actually a better cover, so I agree.
I don't know, man.
Crowdsourcing worked this time? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this one works.
So, Pastor Doug, why this book now?
I mean, you grew up in the 70s.
Yeah,
You know,
I did.
You know, why now?
Well, basically, now, right across the border in Washington State, pot shops have sprung up everywhere because it's not recreational use of cannabis is legal and
Right on the border of Idaho.
right on the border, like a mile out, and so it's become more of a practical pastoral problem. And one of the things that, as I was doing this, I knew I was anticipating in conservative Christian circles that there would be a libertarian concern pushing against my thesis.
Yeah.
Yes, we all know that smoking pot is a sin, but we would debate with you over whether it ought to be a crime at all.
Right.
That's the libertarian thing.
So you did write this for me.
So,
Doggone.
but then I was surprised. One of the things that astonished me actually was when the book came out, how many Christians weren't in the it's a sin camp at all.
Right.
You know,
Right.
How many Christians?
Oh,
It's like having a
really?
beer. It's like having a beer
They
can.
take it to be like wine or beer or scotch or something.
So a lot of Christians have been affected by the. Well, it's legal. It's open. It's
Right.
It's recreational.
Yeah.
It's my dad had a martini when I was growing up. You know,
Why
so
can't I
a
have
lot
a
of
joint?
people, basically, a lot of people didn't make a distinction between recreational marijuana use and having a beer after work.
So real quick, unpack that really quickly. What is the difference between having a couple of hits of some weed and having a few sips of scotch.
The basic bottom line difference is that nobody smokes a joint because it pairs nicely with the fish.
Well,
it makes you want to have fish, but
it makes you want to have Oreos and mustard.
It pairs nice with the Funyuns.
Yeah. So what you have is in Scripture, alcohol use. There are a number of uses of alcohol. Medicinal. Take a little wine for your stomach,
Yeah.
Paul tells Timothy. Yep. There's sacramental. Jesus initiates the Lord's Supper with wine. Right. There's thirst. Jesus said from the cross, I thirst, and he was offered wine. So you've got a number of legitimate uses. And the one prohibited use to alcohol is the reason why people smoke dope. So if someone wanted to say
drunkenness,
getting the buzz or getting an altered state of consciousness, that's the thing that's prohibited with alcohol, and that's the one thing that people are pursuing with smoking a joint.
So the comeback is, but God gave wine to make the heart glad.
Right.
What's the difference between gladness of heart with wine and that buzz?
I would say the celebratory use is what you're talking about. Is I think of toasts at a wedding reception. Okay, you've got it's wine to make the heart glad. It's a celebratory occasion. It pairs nicely with the fish.
How would you respond to someone who says, "Well, I've smoked dope and I've not gotten high from it. Why can't I?"
So what I would say, if someone smokes dope and let's say someone microdoses or they're doing something where there's no effect at all,
and then they're not even using it right. Yeah, right. Exactly.
There's no sin. There's also no point.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I have all kinds of questions, Pastor, because my dad was a herbalist. I've been around weed for a long time. I've seen it used in so many different ways. I've seen the advances in it, even the way that they've been able to split it and use it for studying, for uppers, not just downers, and use it all kinds of different ways and limit it, even the THC in it, to limit it so that it doesn't have the effect in the same way smoking does. So it's not just a smoking thing for me. So I think I fit into a very medicinal part of this conversation. But the thing that's interesting to me about this is the vice that I think we can get attached to and become enslaved by. And so the part of me that really liked the book was the condition of our condition.
Right.
Could you just talk about it a little bit? Because people like me, I think we have a tendency, I mean this honestly, to be played because we see those things.
Right.
Somebody like me who understands the issues with the police and the racism and stuff like that easily can bend towards a critical theory position without embracing all of those things, because we have a different perspective in this.
Yeah.
But we can be played.
Right.
And so when you talk about the condition of our condition, I think it helps set the tone for what we're actually getting at.
Right. What direction is our country going? Are we thriving in self-control?
Just look at our army videos.
Right.
Yeah. Are we growing in discipline and hard work? And no, or is this all part of a slide?
Yeah.
It's going somewhere.
It's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Now the thing that I want to I guess emphasize is that if you I have no problem with genuine medicinal applications of marijuana, or if you do the research and you're careful and you're actually caring for people. In principle, I wouldn't say, "Oh, God gave us all these things to experiment with, but that's off the table because."
Sure,
right.
I get that.
It's taboo. Whatever.
So, but part of the problem with the federal government making it illegal is that it bans research, right? Or it gets in the way of researching these things.
Private entities being able to do it.
Yeah, so I think we should be able to research it. I think we should be able to do all those things. And I would stipulate that the way the war on drugs has been conducted is demented and evil.
Destroyed a lot of small black communities. I've seen that. Yeah.
So the using the 9-pound sledgehammer in the war on drugs and seizing someone's car, you arrest someone under suspicion of using drugs or running drugs, and you can seize his car without a trial. Right. You can seize his assets without a trial.
Fourth Amendment out the window.
All of those things, I think any Christian conservative should object to stridently.
Yeah.
At the same time,
Yeah.
I think we should say, let's be careful, let's be careful, let's be careful, because the federal government, I believe, a socialist collectivist government wants an enervated people.
Yeah.
They prefer a population of lotus eaters, to a population of hardworking, disciplined.
It's easier to lead a nation around that's stoned, than a nation that's sober-minded and thoughtful.
Stone people can follow the socialists' arguments.
So
and they're happy to get in bread lines.
Well, they make sense. They're logical.
You make a good point.
So they're happy to get in bread lines,
so then
too.
the arguments that people are having right now, my libertarian friends, we completely disagree on this, but they're like, we need to have the liberty to be able to do this, so the government can't legislate this. They're arguing for so I would argue the government shouldn't legislate it, but I'm not arguing for it so that we can have the liberty to be high. I want to argue for it because the government shouldn't be in those type of things. I love your argument about there should be two other governments that should be legislating against it, the church and the family. But when the government gets to legislating things like drugs, then we start seeing stuff like hydroxychloroquine that is
outlawed.
Outlawed. And so I'm like, I don't want that, but I do want harsh punishments for anybody. Go ahead.
But this is the thing.
Yeah.
You can't put liberty issues on something like this. It has to either come in across the board or very, very gradually. So, for example, if you legalize marijuana and you don't legalize the right of an employer to fire a stoner, right? Then what's happened is you're making the hardworking businessman subsidize this guy's bad habit.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I agree.
In a genuine free market, let's say in a libertarian paradise where smoking dope was legal.
Is there such thing as libertarian paradise?
Well, I say in here, work with me. work
Imagine.
with me. It's a thought experiment. I don't think a libertarian paradise would be a paradise. But in this hypothetical setup, the damage would be a lot less if businessmen had the right to simply not employ people, and if there were no welfare checks. No welfare checks for people on drugs. No right to automatic employment. Right now, if someone wants to fire someone, there's all kinds of employment law that all sorts of hoops they have to jump through and so on. So I would prefer to have liberty to businessmen first. Right.
Absolutely.
And then let's talk about medicinal marijuana. Then let's talk about these other things. And the thing that you pointed out is I think we need to simultaneously buttress the church's stand against marijuana use and the family's stand.
And we should treat it like drunkenness.
Right.
And the way that the church has had to have a stance against drunkenness and alcoholism for many centuries.
So if you were governor of Idaho for a day, would you?
What a glorious 12 hours.
Yes, it would be. Yes,
12 hours.
I would vote for you.
That's a lot of time.
Would you, if a bill was before you saying to legalize marijuana, would you, out of conviction of the difference between sins and crimes, would you legalize marijuana?
Well, I have a proposal near the end of the book of what I think should replace our current drug system. If you had a macro bill that followed my recommendations.
All of you running for
in
office.
a perfect Calvinistic theonomic society.
Chapter 10. On the one hand, I don't think it's right or conscionable to send a 19-year-old kid to the penitentiary for years because he was caught with a bag of marijuana. I think that's demented. You're sending him to a graduate school for vice and crime. And it just makes no sense. But I do think that I don't think we should make it completely legal. What I argue for is decriminalization, not legalization. And
define that for me.
Well, I'd want a separate system of drug courts. So so if you're arrested for possession, you have the option of paying a fine or going to rehab.
Okay.
Which is
but that's with possession though. So
the same thing. So basically, you'd have drug courts that would handle drug cases.
And some states are doing that already to some extent. I know Idaho has drug courts, for example, already. And I know it's still in the I think it's still part of the criminal system. But there's
that kind of gets into sins and crimes a little bit. So what would be the crime in possession?
Well, basically, the crime is the possession and use. So if you're selling, you'd have to have this all worked out. But one of the things that has not been looked at is the relationship between getting stoned regularly and psychosis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So there, and it's one of those things where when the birth control pill was invented, everybody was ready for it, and so you weren't allowed to look into possible side effects.
Right.
Right. It basically,
You mean like right now the vaccine?
well, like the vaccine.
Yeah.
Everybody's yelling. There's certain things that we will rush through.
Right.
Right. So we rushed through the birth control pill, and now decades later, maybe there's some breast cancer issues. And we're doing the same thing with the vaccine now. If there's certain things that you could bring up, because like what causes autism? Maybe our cell phones are causing autism,
right?
And then you can get a real buzz. But if you said a real buzz in the media about that, but if you said, "I wonder if daycare centers have anything to do with autism," you're going to be run out of town for even wanting to investigate it.
Right.
Wow. So on the thing with marijuana, there is a clear link between marijuana use, regular marijuana use, especially with teenage boys whose brains are forming, and psychosis, schizophrenia. And so when there's a inexplicable shooting, someone goes around the bend, or a school shooting, we're allowed to ask what gun did he use
and what color he was,
what color he was, what gun did he use to shoot up the school. We're not allowed to ask how many drugs the school nurse gave him, what drugs they were,
for how long.
We're not allowed to ask whether he was a regular pot smoker,
or if he had a father. You talk about that in the book.
Dad.
So I think the thing I'm getting hung up on is biblically, how can you define marijuana smoking as a crime biblically?
Okay, so one of the things I go into here is when you look at this issue of psychosis, it's getting drunk at home is not a crime in Moses' Israel, getting drunk at home, but getting behind a wheel and driving over somebody or into the back of somebody's car would be a crime.
But the crime there is you killed someone or you hit someone. It's not the drunkenness.
Did you just interrupt the good Dr. Pastor?
I'm just getting this all out.
So let's say someone is falling down drunk and they're weaving down the middle of the street at 2 a.m, and Andy of Mayberry pulls him over.
As he would,
and he lets him sleep it off in the jail.
Right.
Okay, that is not tyranny.
Right.
Okay? Now, it may not be the optimum way to handle drunk driving, but it's just not tyranny. That community is simply defending itself against a likely threat
and defending him from himself.
Yeah, I think that's protection. Yeah, for him.
That's self-defense.
That's
okay. Now, with alcohol, the half-life of alcohol in the body is measured in hours.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
The half-life of THC in the system is measured in weeks.
Yep.
It stays in the system.
Sure.
There's the possibility of flashbacks. And do I want my Delta pilot to be a stoner on every weekend? Do I want him? No, I don't. All right. And the last time I got loaded was 3 weeks ago. It doesn't matter.
There's still THC in your system.
You're still risking the lives of your passengers. Okay. Now, when you have a system like that, a society like that, there's a reasonable point where you can say that you don't have Andy of Mayberry follow the drunk down. Let's wait till he kills somebody.
Right.
Okay. Let's take there's a prudent preventative measure that can be taken.
Sure.
Okay. Now, I'm opposed to the cops setting up a roadblock, pulling people over, and giving random tests, breathalyzer tests, because there's no probable cause. There's no, you can't do it like that. So I think that you ought to have some sort of reasonable protection of society while also protecting society from the tyrant.
We're not done. He just getting me started. We're going to have to save it for the next segment because... and I might have one before you have one, and Gabe still has one of them. So I know you got a bunch of them. You want to send those in? What's your email address so we can get Well, first, I hope you're going to Amazon to buy the book.
Devoured by cannabis.
More cross politics when we come back with Pastor Doug Wilson. We got to talk about more like legalization of this. I'm not sold yet, Pastor.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
Hold it. No asking questions on the break.
Who's first?
Welcome back to Cross Politic. We got Pastor Doug Wilson, pastor of Christ Church here in Moscow, Idaho. He's our pastor.
Yes, he is.
Founder of Logos
I try
School.
anyway.
You can see how that's going.
I'll take the blame for that.
Founder of Logos School, New St. Andrews College, author of bazillion books, father of three.
Yeah.
Grandpa, Papa to how many?
90?
17.
Okay.
17. As far as you know. Really grateful to have Doug back on the show. I'm asking the question because I opened the segment.
But I got to say something real quick. I really have to thank Chelsea, our event planner for the rally.
Yeah.
She, there was a shortage of Chick-fil-A, and there's been a shortage of chicken.
And Chick-fil-A
and
sauce?
she's like, here's the last of it. She found some Chick-fil-A sauce and sent it to me. Not us.
There's 2 bottles there, though.
Me. And she said, I don't want you having to mess around. I don't want anybody messing around with Knox's chicken.
Oh.
So praise the Lord. I just want to say thank God for this woman. She is single. She needs a good husband. And you can tell that she's going to be a good wife one day to some man.
There's a dowry right there.
Chelsea,
Chick-fil-A
thank you.
sauce.
That is awesome. Okay.
So I was going to go back to, we're talking about the biblical case for some measure of criminalization, or you said not criminalization, but regulation?
No, decriminalization.
Decriminalization.
Decriminalization, not legalization.
What's the category biblically? So we make a big deal, and we've worked hard on this show in particular of hammering this distinction between sins and crimes.
Right.
If it's not a crime, then we've said it's not the state's jurisdiction.
Right.
Generally speaking, what's the biblical case for this other sort of gray area or overlapping jurisdiction or something like that?
So what I argue for is, look, marijuana is against the law now. I'm arguing in Idaho. I'm arguing against a galloping into legalization
Sure.
without researching it first.
Right.
So what I'm saying is we need to put this issue of psychosis on the table. Right. We have to look at states, and Colorado, which is one of the first states to legalize marijuana, has now acknowledged the link between marijuana use and psychosis.
They've done enough of it to be like, yeah, that's a problem.
And what happens to the driving stat? What happens to traffic fatalities? What happens? We should look before we go along with the legalization.
Right. Yeah.
Now, so I'm not talking about let's legalize everything and then let's go and institute my decriminalization. I'm saying from where we are now,
let's ride the brakes.
Let's ride the brakes
in loosening some of it up.
Yes, I say at the beginning. In the intro, that I'm arguing for blinking yellow.
Yeah, right. Okay. At the least.
A blinking yellow. Slow down. Let's go cautiously. There's something to investigate here. Does our society have a legitimate interest in defending themselves against the side effects of this kind of widespread drug use?
So, Pastor Wilson, can I argue for the case of a good government that punishes wickedness rightly, biblically, is going to have a lot less of a certain type of mentality of a people that are willing to go and do these things?
Correct.
So I think part of our problem is that we don't even with the laws that are on the books now with alcohol and drunkenness, we don't police those well at all.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, like even all the laws we have with DUIs, and you take somebody's life and then you can take another person's life and you lose your license or spend some time in jail.
Right.
That's not no way in the world.
Yeah. Right.
People who are getting drunk and killing people, vehicular manslaughter,
they need to die.
There should be very severe penalties, and some of them absolutely need to have the death penalty. And that would put a damper on that.
A massive damper on somebody saying, maybe I should get behind the wheel and operate a vehicle, or maybe I need to control my passions.
You're absolutely right. If we had biblical penalties after the fact, we would need a lot less preventative measures. Right.
And yes. And that control, and also teaches and disciples into righteousness. So that's what the law would do, is say, well, we want a society. He's talk about this in the book that no matter what laws we put there, if we don't have a moral people anyway, it's not going to. I'm reading Rushdoony now on pornography and politics. And it's a really great book. But one of the things he argues is like, we started legislating against pornography and all we got was more of it.
Yeah.
And so the problem that we really have is an immoral people that the law is going to magnify
They want this vice,
right?
And law doesn't save,
right?
So law does not save. Law should be something that grows out of if you have a gospel-centered people, a Christian people, they can be free, and then law is applied around the edges, around the perimeter,
right,
to police certain outliers.
Right.
But if you're trying to take a nation of slaves to sin, and you're trying to make them better through the law, everything you do is going to make it worse.
Right.
When you crack down on drug smugglers and crack down, that law is going to make it worse.
Right.
When you legalize it, your law is going to make it worse. Everything is going to make it worse.
Because the law can't fix it.
Law can't fix it.
Law can't save.
So the place that we're in right now, I'm concerned about legalizing something with people who are already prone to a particular vice. Like there's vices all over with pornography, all kinds of stuff, especially with drugs. It's not just marijuana. You got opioids. You got all kinds of stuff that are vices. So when you legalize something, you're creating more people to be enslaved to whatever you want them to be enslaved to. So then I struggle with that. At the same time, I'm concerned that the very government that we have right now trying to regulate this, they're not capable in any way, which is why I think your argument in the book for the family and the church being able to take and legislate this in their spheres of government have a way better chance of having an effect on the society than trying to push some sort of legislation through government.
Right. So the main thing I wanted this book to accomplish is to convince Christians that getting stoned is a sin. Right? Getting stoned is a sin. And that equips pastors of churches and elders of churches and mothers and fathers to categorically deal with it within their spheres. Now, at some point, if there are a large number of Christians, someone's going to say, well, what about the cops? What about the law?
Right.
And that's why I have a proposal near the end.
Yeah.
But that proposal is not my solution.
Right.
The solution is gospel in the churches and gospel in families.
Right. I think one of the things too that families in particular, recognizing that it's a sin, the government of the family should be considered a powerful weapon in all of this.
Right.
Frequently, Christian families just have such a low view of what God's given them. And so we think so little is going on. But what you're building in a family it's one of the central governments that God's established in the world.
Right.
And if you're doing it right, that family is growing actually in power and in influence and in wealth.
And families are where self-control is learned or not.
Exactly.
That's right.
And there's a powerhouse there in the family, and people forget that it's not and the weapons of the family, if you will, or the punishments in the family. It doesn't just stop with spanking or grounding. The ultimate one is disinheritance.
Correct.
But many families have not built the kind of governmental structure, the kind of beautiful kingdom in their home that disinheritance would mean anything.
Right.
But
here's my credit card debt.
Would you put the idea of a family member saying, my son has become a threat to society and has been destroying our society, that I'm taking them before the government said, you need to have this needs to be dealt with. Right. I think that's even a higher, people don't even have a concept for that.
Right. But before that you should have exhausted all of your tools.
Yeah.
And of course, so much of this it's not threats. It's gospel. It's love. It's loyalty. It's building something together. But when you build something together in a home, a business, a mission, God blesses that, and people want to belong to that, and you begin to gather more people in. You have a widowed aunt, and you have cousins, and you have other people that come along and start gathering in, and you build something beautiful that people want to be a part of. And then if somebody's saying, no, I'm betraying the family. Right. I will not serve your God. I will not serve your mission. Well, then ultimately down that road, when you plead with them and you call them back to the family and they won't do that, then you cut them off. And there might be even further things off where you got to bring it to the church.
Go baptize your kids if you have children.
You can't do that unless you're Presbyterian covenantal about this.
That's true.
Right. You just can't operate that way because your kids aren't necessarily inside of your
You don't know if they are or aren't.
Yeah.
You just can't operate that way.
You don't understand that there's a thing there.
Yeah.
There's a God-given covenant there in the family.
Unit.
Yeah.
That's a unit. That's one of the building blocks of society. It's one of the powerhouses of a community.
So, Pastor, I want to piggyback on what Pastor Toby's getting at and ask, how do you, as a father and a mother, discipline your kids when you see them that are going down this way and they're coming in stone and you're having to deal with kids that are already in this.
Well, if you're at that point, it has to begin with a whole lot of confession of sin, because this protecting your children against this sort of thing starts when they're 1 and 2 years old.
Right.
You know, if so, what to check? What's your where are your kids getting educated? Where do they go to school? What's the playlist like? Do you know what your kids listen to? What are your kids? How are they being catechized with movies and sitcoms? And do you have any grasp of the mental, visual, audio intake that your kids are going through? Now, often,
who are their friends too?
Who are their friends? Right. Who are their mentors? Who are their teachers?
But Pastor, my kids are pagans and not in the covenant. I don't know how I'm going to be able to.
I think you should buy one of your onesies.
Go baptize your kids if you have children.
Before we go, I really want to talk to you really quick. I've seen a lot. So, the CDC came out with new guidelines. Anyone who is vaccinated gets to take their mask off their
Hardly
face.
said that.
If you're vaccinated, you can go from 5 masks to 3.
To 3 now. and it's created a lot of hoopla because people are trying to figure out, wait a second, if this person has their mask off, are they vaccinated or are they lying to me?
Right.
And so there's no regulation now on how to figure out who's vaccinated, who's not. There's also something that I've seen where people have relaxed in pursuit of the tyranny that we see going on because everyone is, as soon as the CDC came out with this, Costco came out with we're releasing
Walmart,
everybody even our own city council themselves took off the mandate. Right. And so I saw, and that's not surprising to me, but what's surprising is watching everybody, as we said this on Wednesday, kind of woosah. And now they're thinking this is all over.
Right.
And so right now, as we see this kind of woosah happening and this release of the mandates happening, how should we actually be engaging and thinking about what just happened?
So what just happened, what needs to happen is after the moment of relief and exhilaration, I don't have to wear this mask anymore. I think it was Pennsylvania just put some restrictions on
the governor.
What the governor can do in the future. I think all 50 need to do that, and they have to say, okay, clearly, the emergency powers that these governors were able to appeal to were written in another era when people knew what an emergency actually was. Right? Mm-hmm. It's a Martian invasion. It's a asteroid shower. It's a dam breaking. You can't just declare an emergency and keep the emergency alive through public service announcements. Basically. I think what we need to do is strengthen the ability of our legislatures to end
emergency orders.
End emergency orders. There's got to be some sort of redress, a mechanism that people can use.
We need a check and balance on that.
We need a check and balance on that.
We thought the emergency area would be something that everybody would agree on and it would be easy, but they've used that lever to foist all this on us, and so we need a check and balance on emergency orders.
And that's at a government level, but what about like at a county level or a city council level? Because even though they might do that, you still have city councils out there that would still.
But the city council here was piggybacking off of the government. So
right.
when they did their local emergency order, they were saying, well, because of what the governor did. So basically, these things cascade down. And what I would like to do, we've conducted ourselves here in Moscow in such a way as in the frenzy, we were pretty unpopular with some people. I've gotten flipped off a number of times on the streets of Moscow by the kind, loving people. It ran hot for a while. But now, when people are going to say, okay, maybe there was an overreaction, maybe, then people are going to remember who didn't buckle, who didn't go along with it.
Will they remember, though? That's my problem. I don't know if they will.
I think they will. And if they don't, we can remind them.
So,
the other thing to remember too is locally. I think there are things governmentally you can do locally as well. We were actually in process of trying to get some kind of referendum related to our mask mandate here that our local government squashed. And so we've got work to do locally just to say, all right, look, quite apart from this particular thing, there has got to be a way of checking emergency orders even locally.
Right.
And so you can't just say it's an
that's
emergency. There's nothing you can do. The people, I mean, the government here in our republic does arise from the people, and there has to be a check and balance there.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that's on the second side of this, second part of this question is with the demand for legislation to figure out who's vaccinated and who's not with masks. Are we about to repeat phase 2 with the vaccinations as we did with the masks? Because now they got to figure out who's vaccinated and who's not. Chicago, Lori Lightfoot is saying that she's doing events only for people who are vaccinated. And so we're seeing the segregation grow between vaccinated and unvaccinated. Like, we just went through this with masks.
Right. And they're pushing this play hard, but there is resistance on this point. And Governor DeSantis in Florida saying, making it against the law to require vaccine.
Our governor did that too.
Passport, and
Governor
Idaho
Little
did that. And if Brad Little did that, he was pretty aggressive with the lockdown and pretty susceptible to pressure the other way.
Right.
If he stood up against the vaccine passports, that indicates that there's
Hefty pressure.
a hefty pressure that way. Don't go down this road. I think that the left is going for broke in this moment. I think they're going to try and get everything that they can possibly get. They're running their plays.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we just need to say no.
And God sits in his heaven and laughs. I just realized, guys, I said earlier that my book was plugged in Christianity Today. I double-checked it. It was actually World Magazine.
Oh.
Bloodbout World,
Yeah.
so not Christianity Today. But just
Devoured by
Correction within a whole hour. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Not bad.
Doing our homework. Devoured by cannabis. Devoured by cannabis. Can I get that back again? Weed, Liberty, and Legalization. Pastor Wilson, we can get this at Amazon?
Yep.
Okay.
Can of press.
Can of press.
Until he's canceled.
Well, he'll probably be canceled.
Go to
If
Can
you
of
see-
Press.
It's just a
Can of
matter
Press-
of time.
Yeah, Amazon, they don't pay us. Can and Press might give us a handout, though,
Maybe.
right? So, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
We did not design a cookie-cutter curriculum meant to chop students into appropriately shaped submissives or snowflakes for the secular zeitgeist. We designed our curriculum the way we did because we want our graduates to be equipped to stand courageously against that destructive zeitgeist and to honor their maker and how they, body, mind, and soul, battle to save their communities and the entire Western world from our current diseased insanity. New St. Andrews College is not in the business of rubber stamping graduates for this particular job market or that particular career. We aren't happy unless our graduates are equipped to tackle any constructive cultural task anywhere, from courtrooms to hospitals to job sites to movie sets to the highest risk job and the most important setting of all, the raising and training of the next generation of immortal souls around dining room tables and in pews. The world may have gone mad, but it's not the first time. It has been saved before and by particular people, many of whom shared a very particular type of education. Augustine, Calvin, Jefferson, Churchill, and many lesser-known heroes in times of madness all had one type of education, one type of training in common. And it's the same kind of rigorous education we currently pursue surrounded by the rolling wheat fields of Idaho. By God's grace, our civilization will be saved, or rebuilt, from the smoking ruins. The men and women capable of such a task, capable of fearless joy and fiery laughter, all while undertaking such hard cultural labor, those are the kind of graduates we want, the kind we expect. They are why we exist, and why we teach what we teach. So you might call it a major in world building, or culture shaping, or a major in saving civilization. We call it classical Christian liberal arts. New St. Andrews College, saving civilization since 1994.